definitely need to go through each of those items,
Yeah,
item by item, and,
Yeah.
and maybe there's a discussion.
Well,
And
I kind of think it'd be good
for
for,
all of the committee members to,
yeah.
that's how I think.
If
Well,
Gordon
we
wants
will
to
all
sort of
go
walk
through
us through it, I think
Yes.
that's a good idea.
what I'm saying is, would you empower, though, a subcommittee to between now and our next, because we're not planning to approve this today,
No.
okay? But would
we
you
should talk
approve a
it through.
subcommittee to go, be able to talk about in like in detail?
I think we should all kind of talk through it a little bit, so that, yeah.
Can I tell you my fear? My fear is that if there are 9 people who are gonna review this, they think all the other 8 are doing it in detail, no one's gonna do it in detail. That's my real fear.
But.
And if you have a subcommittee, they'll review it in detail.
I have an idea.
Yeah,
So if Paul kind of put together the 19 pages.
right.
Can he kind of walk us through, his logic and what, he put together in there? One of the things that I really like to see in there, since we just talked about it, was the direction, the ability of the firm to create a site-sensitive architectural design that is traditional or mission style and not just ultra-modern, and I don't know that that's specifically in there.
Can I inject something maybe along
Sure.
both lines? I think that's what Gordon is suggesting, is that between he and Paul, you walk through that scope of work, which is the meat of the project, task by task, big picture focus, so that everybody in this room gets a feel for it.
Yeah,
And then, from a staff perspective, in working into the weeds, a subcommittee makes a whole lot more sense. Have the subcommittee look at any of those weed issues, and then bring that back to the full CCAC, and we do the whole thing again.
right, yeah, right.
Yeah, I like that.
Would that feel
Well, yeah,
okay?
but that's kind of what I was, yeah.
Okay, great.
You're all saying the same thing.
But-
Does anybody not feel comfortable with that approach? Okay, so then why don't we do the first round right now, then we'll decide who's the subcommittee, and then we'll decide when they come back and report. It's probably in one of these meetings, this meeting, right, so it's not going to take too long.
While we're waiting for Teresa, let me mention, one of the things, and it was, one of the guiding principles here is that because we're doing a two-step process, that we don't need to get as much of their qualifications in the proposal that they send, because in theory, we're gonna see that right up front. So I've tried to get this more focused on what they're gonna do, and Paul will, I think, probably is the more appropriate person to
Right.
take us through the detailed scope of work. But, so, in the overview process, it just kind of repeated a little bit of information, but didn't repeat quite as much. But I don't want, if someone were to pick this up and say, where's the proposal? They're able to go back to this and say, okay, they had the basic information in there. So I'm not sure it's necessary.
I think we have time, I think you should take us through it.
Okay, well,
This is the most important roadmap we're gonna have
all right.
for the
Well,
next 2 years.
But the point being that most of the work really should be the presentation on the newer
Sure.
material. The overview just gives some background. I wanted to make sure they were aware that because it's important to their scope, that we're already in the process of the environmental review. Paul and I met with them last week along with the town planner, and they gave us a long list of data that I'll be in the process of collecting over the next week. They gave us their schedule, which Paul was going to be integrating in terms of milestones into the overall project schedule. So that was in here. We can't tell them at this point whether we're going to have a mitigated negative declaration or EIR. It's most likely going to be an EIR, just because of the historical nature of the library buildings, but we'll see that. But giving them some idea. The background just talks about the two sizes of the building, and this is important that if the committee thought, and obviously, as a staff, there's a wall between here and the fundraising effort. If you thought, gee, the fundraising effort's going to be phenomenal, and we're going to raise $38 million, and we're going to do this and this and this and this, and I was just reading the article about I think it was Los Altos, that they're going to $75 million project, and I thought, wow, great.
Wow.
They're gonna float a bond.
Yeah, and along with the bond.
Okay.
But if the committee thought you're going to do more, it's important for the environmental process that this, not that you think big, but that we describe big. you know, we have to, because you can always build something smaller, but if we say it's a 25,000 square foot building, you know, and it's 25,400 square feet, nobody's gonna be concerned, but if it goes to 27,000 or 28,000, someone could bring a challenge under the environmental, so just.
Doesn't it more get into the number of users, occupants, rather than size of the
It does,
building?
it does, but some, well, you know, I'm talking to several lawyers in the room, anybody can challenge anything, but, you know, I'm just bringing it up, if you thought you wanted to go bigger and describe something more than what is currently described in the master plan, the environmental document that has a description of what the project is the appropriate place to do it.
If they add
And this
a-
is also doing
Can
that.
we have a range?
Sure you can, and but the range would, the
That's
upper end of the
first.
range, they'd have to analyze.
Give a range.
Yeah, I think the big issue, yeah, if we could give a range, which also qualified that we're not talking about more, the things that have been discussed are adding sustainability issues, so there, somehow that might make the building bigger, I don't know, a tower or something for exhaust heat or something. Talking about, is there a gun range, which is no more occupancy, but maybe there's an EIR issue
Well,
of noise or something that
It
they have
could,
to
it
talk
could
about.
be if, and I, you know, just thinking,
Is there an underground garage or
is there
not?
underground, but if there was a gun range, because there aren't very many in the peninsula, other agencies may say, gee, we'd love to come down and practice here. That has an impact on traffic, could have an impact on parking.
Oh.
So that's why you have to describe the largest project
Could
you're
have
likely to
a
build.
coffee budget could go out of control too.
And so what about if we wanted to include a
Donuts.
coffee cafe? Right.
Then
Project.
That, and
That would change it, yeah, that would be.
it could, yeah, it could have an impact,
Okay,
because, you know, food waste could be an issue. There might be people that, you know, from the community that would like to come to the Atherton
how does that
Cafe.
relate to, just so we stay on topic for a second, because that sounds like a topic for future discussion.
Well, how it-
I think.
Is that in describing the overview,
Uh-huh.
we're describing the project, and in the background, we talk about a 25,000 square foot library and a 25,000 square foot administration/police building and a 9,000 square foot library. We don't talk a whole lot about some of the other features. So if you want to include those features in the analysis, it would be good to have those in the background, and they'll have to be incorporated, because
So maybe here we
I'll
might
give
say
this to
plus
the-
additional facilities that fund, to the extent funding is available.
and you'd have to the extent that they could trigger more noise, more traffic.
But that's not these guys' problem, that's a different problem. That's
It's a
our-
different problem,
yeah.
but I'm saying, the documents are shared between the design architect and the environmental group.
Yeah, no, I get it. Okay, got it.
So I
So
just-
we're gonna wanna update this to reflect that.
You may want to, I'm, you know, as we're going through with the, you know, 10,000 foot level, and I wanted to give you that information, because that kind of came out from, you know, from our discussions with the environmental group. Even, for example, what kinds of events, and I mean, I hope this doesn't sound too, you know, down in the weeds, as George would say, well, what kind of events might occur in the town green? The reason being, again, traffic, noise.
Yeah, concerts
So
would
if
change
you want
that.
to say, you know,
maybe it's conceivable.
we expect to
Yeah.
have some, you know, citywide, townwide gatherings, you know, evening concerts, art shows, whatever, it has an impact. It could, you know, you might want to limit them in terms of time, you might want to limit them in terms of light, of noise, of, you know, et
Yeah,
cetera.
sure.
But there's some broad brush
Right.
verbiage we can add to that.
Yeah,
that doesn't
absolutely.
get into the weeds.
Right.
Nailing us down, and I think some of the other concern is that what we put in this is a public document, and we've spent a lot of time trying to calm down the community that we're not building a Taj Mahal.
So are you recommending a change, Gordon? or
No, I'm not recommending a change at all. I'm merely bringing to the committee's attention that if you know, if you wanted to suggest that there might be more going on than what this document says, you know.
But we definitely should include the additive alternates that we've been talking about in terms of
Right.
that broad brush description of the base.
But if there was the additive alternate of a cafe, let's say, for example, it probably would be worthwhile to add that in.
I
so
think
that
unknown
the
future uses
analysis-
we can be silent on, Right.
Well, you can.
Like, will we have concerts out here?
Yeah, we're just
Decide
saying
the
it's a
future.
town green for community use.
Yeah.
That-
Right, that,
that's-
exactly. You don't have to be
Yeah,
real
that's
specific.
good.
Yeah, okay,
Okay, so
Right.
I made notes on that.
Okay.
thanks.
Then onto the site location and description, I don't really think you need a whole lot. I will point out, because the question came up,
Thank you.
that approximately in the middle, slightly below the 50% mark of that section 3, it talks about the SFPUC, which is, it's not the state PUC, it's the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission, which is their water department essentially. A 36-inch water main that they colloquially referred to as Hatch-Hetchy system. That's there. I have now all the utility maps, including SFPUC. I have 4 proposals from underground utility firms that will come out here with detection equipment and ground penetrating radar. The place will be a Technicolor of American Public Works Association color markings, and then they'll take that information and have a surveyor come out, capture that information electronically, and produce an AutoCAD layer for our maps with that information.
Good.
So, and that process started about 3 months ago, so all these things take time,
Yeah.
but, even talking about it, so we'll know that, and then
And we're
tomorrow.
using the word refining because
Right.
your preliminary sense is it's not gonna require a wholesale redo of the site plan.
Yeah, I think the concept of library on one side, administration on the other, town green in the middle, and parking on the fringes, and relocation of what roads, all can be done, given that water line where it is.
Okay,
But the building may not be more of a rectangle, or more of a square, it may be a more elongated rectangle, as an example. Or the library may need to be demolished prior to building the new library, which is different than, maybe putting in a temporary library facility. That's different than we had previously done, where.
well, the administrative building may be 2 buildings or.
Right,
Yeah.
when they looked at it, they said, oh, we think we can keep all the original buildings and all the trees and everything, because that water line wasn't as detailed factored into their master plan, something else may have to
Okay.
be. Okay.
Okay.
And then the next part is the scope of work.
Wait, before you leave site location, I mean, you're referencing the 100 off-street parking and the police secured parking, that may be a place where you might want to note, which may be in a basement.
Sure, that's the kind of, exactly, Rick, thank you, that's the kind of input that will be very helpful to amend this, because the more, I think the more information we can give them of what we're looking for, the better their proposal will be. And then we get onto the scope of work, which is generally described. Here it does talk about the underground garage, sustainable design, net zero impact, and our LEED compliant design. And we didn't say, we haven't specified what level of LEED. We just said LEED compliant, which, pretty much the code's gonna require at least LEED silver. If you wanted to say, and a goal of LEED platinum, you could do that. I probably want Paul to talk a little bit more about what that means,
Yeah.
but I think
You
it's
said
certainly.
it in a pretty clear way, that we want an environmentally stable building, and we should
Right.
there level.
Okay. So, and I can probably even take out some of the experience material now, because we will have vetted that, so something to think about.
Just as an interjection, I would like Paul just to address whether he thinks we should be specifying the lead level or anything even above the lead level, because that's surely going to impact their fees. Maybe not the architectural, but certainly the MEP.
Yeah, so my question there is, this just refers to LEED, well, we know base buildings in California now have to be LEED silver, so should that, where it says possibly net zero impact, should it be LEED platinum? Should we
And
reference
obviously,
Our original premise here was this was gonna be a budget-driven project, and if you nail yourself down to LEED platinum.
No, he's saying consideration of it.
Yeah, it
He's
says,
not saying it's a
possibly
base.
including.
yeah, possibly including
Yeah.
net zero impact. Or, right now it says LEED compliant, we know everything's gonna be LEED compliant, so my question was to follow up on, I guess what Gordon said, which is, what would the implication of saying LEED Platinum rather than just LEED? Because I don't think there's any value to say LEED.
Lead
Everything's LEED.
Everything's lead compliant. At least to some level.
Yeah, and
They're almost apples and oranges, though. The California building code has green building components to it, and LEED is sort of a parallel system. There's a lot of complementary components to it, but they're different. So if you say LEED, silver, or platinum, that means you're using their scorecard and their criteria for what's important in the scoring of it. Whereas the California Green Building Code, being slightly different, gives you a little more flexibility about what you incorporate into your project. So for instance.
I think he's not asking for that clarification. I think Rick's just saying, should we alert them that we really want to look at, we want to consider, you need to have, your firm needs the ability to consider LEED at a platinum level. If you can't do that, we don't want to hire you.
But it's also more than that, in that we're asking them to submit fees for this.
Well, it would be an alternate, yeah.
But it's it's possibly, right? It's
Yeah.
in the same line with underground garage.
So it would say something like, other potential interests are an underground garage and sustainable design with a consideration up to LEED Platinum.
Possibly,
Or-
I like possibly including net zero impact and or LEED platinum design instead of LEED compliant. LEED gold or platinum
Or
design.
another possibility, let me suggest, and Paul, please comment on this, would be to say, or exceeding the California, building code by at least 20%.
We don't know that yet, though.
I don't know that either.
No.
But the tough thing with net zero is, I'm not sure they're gonna know how to quote that one. LEED Platinum, they know how to quote.
I don't think they're gonna,
And we might go to net zero, but you're asking for a proposal.
we're lumping it into the other potential
Uh-huh.
areas of interest.
Right.
Including the underground, dependent upon budget.
Right.
We could say dependent upon budgetary, constraints.
My opinion is that LEED to net zero gives you a range,
Yeah,
and that within that are possibilities, whether it's LEED gold or platinum or net zero. You're within that range, and they should provide their abilities to do any of that range.
so just by saying the net zero energy, that already goes up to LEED platinum or
Beyond-
above.
So do you think it's better just to say LEED compliant LEED compliant rather than LEED Platinum?
Yeah, where they're gonna charge you more is if you want to submit it to LEED for certification, because that's got a bureaucratic process to it and a filing fee going along with it. If all we're doing is mirroring the criteria, that doesn't cost anything. And the difference between a LEED silver and a LEED platinum project from a design point of view isn't that great. It's not gonna be a big swing.
Yeah, and there's a lot of components of a
the
LEED.
submission has costs.
That our site won't, it doesn't matter.
Well, this team's not gonna charge you more. It's the MVP guys, whoever said that.
But they're part of the team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are they bringing their MVP guy?
Yeah, we're asking for that to be
Yeah,
included.
That's a big difference.
yeah.
If they have, for platinum, now you're bringing in, how we take in water and research, it's a big difference. But that doesn't mean that doesn't mean we're not doing it. It's just how we're gonna say it. So we're arguing a little bit, completely over semantics. And I think,
Well, we're
Rick,
calling
what's
it
your fear
potential.
with the
We're
way
calling
it's
it
worded?
potential.
Which I think that.
Yeah, no,
I don't
right.
care.
I think we
I don't
need to,
feel strong.
like Gordon was saying, we need to kind of make it as big as possible, because we can always whittle it down.
What if you said sustainable range, looking at the range from LEED compliant to net zero? So then it's clearly a spectrum. LEED compliant at the bottom and net zero at the top.
What are they bidding on then?
Because it's other possible areas, so that means change order. That's how I do that.
That's what I mean.
That's how I think that if I'm an architect,
Yeah.
professional services.
Yeah.
I can't quote it if I don't know if I'm doing it, so I'll later, I'm gonna come back and change order.
Right.
Yeah.
Another possibility, we have 6 or 7 ad alternates, of which net zero is not among them currently, because we didn't have it at the time, it wasn't costed out. So maybe as you're doing this review, we can think about it and amend that to say, we want them to include, and I don't know whether you can do this as an architect, but, include ad alternate fees. So if you're gonna add each of these pieces, and then add another one on top of that
Yeah.
that is net zero.
Can I do my personal, this is a personal opinion, not administrative. There's no way in God's green earth we're gonna do this project at less than green, LEED gold. There's no way. This committee will never do that. We're gonna go to LEED gold, I know it. I wouldn't build a building less than LEED gold today as a for-profit developer. I just don't see us doing that. And so what I wonder is if we wanna take a risk and say we currently envision it's gonna be LEED gold, but we'd like you to give out alternates to take it to LEED platinum and our net zero. Because now you're very clear on what you're quoting.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I think that this whole committee, I totally agree with you. We are not gonna build a building to pass building codes.
No.
We're gonna build for the future.
Yeah.
And I think that's a philosophical
Yeah.
thing that we've gotta all agree to, that we want these architects to understand that we want them to build for the future. We don't wanna
Yeah.
build at, like, old standards.
Right.
And so what does that mean?
And what's the
What does that
base,
mean?
and what's their base bid
Yeah,
include?
but what are
Yeah.
they bidding on? If I were an architect and they just said we want, the way you've described it, I wouldn't know what to put in for my fees.
Yeah.
I mean, I want something, you tell me you want this or not.
Yeah.
Well,
I think
maybe
you-
we wouldn't choose you then.
That's right. I mean, I
No,
would
but
want
you
it-
don't know,
I
but she's
want
being
it.
honest.
No, I understand.
And
but I
they
mean,
might not
so-
be honest and just
but-
quote a fee and say, well, you never said
Yeah,
it was
but it's
the
gonna be
end
change
thing.
orders, a lot of change orders.
Yeah, and it'll cost a lot of money.
2 points for you. If you put the fee in, say, for LEED Platinum now, you'll get a fee for that.
No, you'd ask for an alternate for LEED platinum. You'd say,
Fair enough. An alternate
if
is
your
a good way to
proposal,
approach it.
assume it's LEED,
Yeah.
we'd either say silver or gold. I think that's,
But your biggest
you know, very
negotiating
reasonable.
opportunity is with the proposal. If you ask them for an add-on
You'd ask for,
later on.
you'd ask for an
you lost
alternate
your
with the
leverage.
proposal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that's a good way
and the
to
same
do it.
thing with the garage. You would say, you try to come up with how many spaces are we talking about approximately? Because we're talking about the police station, right? And maybe some staff parking.
Mhm.
We'd want to specify both.
Well, I mean,
Approximately
are you talking
50
about the
spaces or
whole
whatever it was.
100, Rick, or what?
What's that?
You said
No,
100?
No,
we're
it was
down
always
slowly.
a portion, but we should, this is the time
Mhm.
to call it out and say as a base bid, or as an alternate bid, LEED platinum and net zero. So give us alternates to go to that level for your design, and B, and you guys would have to advise us on how many spaces really needed to be underneath. And I think the police were 28 or 30, and then it
Like
was,
30 to 40 vehicles total.
yeah, and
Some
so it
storage.
was some staff, because staff makes all the sense in the world to put staff underground.
It
And it
does
was the
get-
general, go ahead.
I was gonna say, it does get complicated because, for instance, if you take the garage.
Yeah.
What we're asking them to do, I think, is to do some schematic designs that would show with and without garage.
Yeah,
And then we might select the garage, and so then there's the construction documents
Yeah.
phase. So
Yeah.
it's not just
Yeah.
one
it's
alternate.
the schematics too.
It's like a multitude of alternates that you need to get.
That's probably gonna be T and M, the schematics for with and without.
So my suggestion was gonna
Yeah.
be, maybe in the schematic phase, or whatever you think is the right, cutoff point, we include all those things. They're gonna study all of them, everything that's on our wish list, and show what the impact would be and try and price them out. And at that point, we can then scale back, and then we've got a firm price for those maybe 3 or 4 alternates that we finally select to go through the CD phase. So we're not asking for alternate pricing on every single element of this, it's only on the CDs.
Or uneven, probably at that point, you wouldn't go into design development presumably, unless you pick those alternates
I
going
think that's
forward.
right. I
But,
think you're
but
right.
Rose raises a really good point, are they going to interpret the underground garage to accommodate the 100 off-street parking spaces? Or, are we going to kind of explain that it would just be the 30 or 40 for the police and maybe some staff, and so it's like 50%, because from the outreach and master planning, the people didn't really want to park downstairs.
No, no,
The public
just
don't wanna
staff
park
and the police
underground,
and, yeah.
okay? They want surface parking, and so that parking garage that was designed by the master plan people, it was way huge, right? Because it took up the entire,
Exactly.
And that's gonna wanna be a part,
that's what blew the budget up, and so,
and this discussion is gonna wanna make it into the
Yeah.
19 pages.
okay, yeah,
A process of where does the conceptual parking garage show up?
right.
When is it up or down? Because it's gotta be relatively early, you know, do we have the funding, do we not? Can we say, yeah, we got a donor, put it in the plan, start doing your footings with that in it or not, you know?
You should make those decisions by the end of schematic design.
Yes.
Because you can have very simple drawings that the architect has
Yeah.
generated that can get an order of magnitude cost estimate.
Yeah,
And then when you're getting your final review, the direction you'll give the design team to go to the next phase will include a parking lot or not, or.
and that needs to make it into the 19 pages of your proposal needs to reflect this.
Yeah.
Just like sustainability does. Sustainability needs to be in these 19 pages.
And maybe, Paul, we may even need to have it
Green
in
building
that,
issues.
with each of the ad alternates called out in sufficient detail so that they can incorporate it, you know, as an ad alternate scope and fee up to schematic design.
I would suggest that you have a base fee up through schematic design, but then if you elect to go further with any of those add-ons, then there's a fee to complete it.
Yeah, and so they'll quote it as yeah, right.
And that, but I think Steve's point would be, we may need to give a bit more specifics than just the 9,000 and the 25,000 square feet for those. For example, you know, photovoltaic, the base would be what, you know, 70% of the cost, or 70% of the need, or net zero. And so they're gonna have to have some, and so we may say net zero would be the base. If we decide to cut it out and cut it back to 70% of that, it's easier to do in the design development. And in schematics, I don't think it would make much of a difference,
It would
whether
make
it's
a
70 or
difference
100%.
with some of the things, not with
Not with
that, but for instance, on the garage.
That's,
There's a big component for the structural
oh, absolutely.
engineer guy.
Right. And the geotechnical as well.
And the geotech, right. So, you know, so I think having all that stuff, because we really want to know what the likelihood is. So my suggestion is that all of those things are included up to schematic
Right,
design.
and I think that's what Paul was saying.
And whether or not it's located
Yeah.
under the police department, which increases the price
Exactly,
substantially.
right, because
Or
you-
if it's under
Sometimes.
What does?
the lawn,
Yeah.
or
Right.
Yeah.
someplace else, but then you've
Yeah.
got all the trees
We
and.
forgot about that little issue.
Yeah.
The
Well-
1.5 building code. change.
Right. Well, it wasn't forgotten, I mean, I talked to Cheryl about it, they understood that, but they did have to factor
It
in
was
the cost.
right there, yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
So the scope of services paragraph on page 4 doesn't really need to be amended.
I think it would get amended in this detailed scope.
Right,
And it would be really super, in the conceptual phase, you'll present options with an underground garage and without. And we'll provide the budgeting people enough detail to be able to price LEED Platinum and net zero. And then and then the question is, when do we get their pricing to carry those things forward? Is it after schematics? Because now they know what they're pricing, or do you get it up front?
right, and, you know, the committee may recommend to council, you may want to have, as council members, you may want to have this be a LEED certified building, or buildings. That would be your choice. There is an extra cost to that, you know, in terms of
Yeah.
the fee and the consultants, but because we're raising funds from the community, you may want to be able to kind of hold up that certificate later and say, look, we got LEED Platinum. As opposed to, we did the checklist, and this is equivalent to LEED Platinum, but without the certificate. I'm not recommending one way or the other, just saying,
Oh, we'll
Is
want a
Colorado
certificate.
certified?
We'll want the
Yes.
certificate.
We'll want that. You're gonna want the big old thing on the ground or in the window, and, yeah.
nice walnut frame.
No, it goes on, it'll go on the building.
So are you, Gordon, going on to the next one, experience, are you saying that we might be able to delete
I think,
C
I
altogether?
just, I had a note that I would probably take that whole section out.
Because we're already vetting them?
Right.
Or would you say, yeah, right, they're not getting it, right.
But no, I think,
We talked about if between the SOQ and their qualifications and the RFP, if our scope embellishes something, where there's something specific that they didn't have in the SOQ, that's their opportunity to come back in and add a consultant. Like if there was somebody special to underground garages or to net zero that wasn't part of their core team.
Well, you could just reference experience, the same as was laid out in the SOP.
yeah,
Could be one
That's
line.
sure.
Or more police department experience.
Yeah,
Mhm.
not 10 fire departments.
Yeah, but if we were designing a fire department, I know who
I know.
Yeah, okay.
They're just like cops, just no guns, right?
Although with the
And
advent
better
of,
shafts.
with the advent of the drought and the, the creation of the water cop position, I suggest the water cops now carry water guns.
Oh, there you go.
Very good.
Okay.
Moving on.
The review process is gonna be
And
as
I
it
wondered
is.
how we were gonna possibly take 2 hours for this meeting today.
Froze.
Okay. We do need to talk about the timeline. This has the proposals due in November 21st, so it's gonna somewhat depend on when we get this out, and I agree, Steve, 15th versus 17th shouldn't make a big difference, but,
So this assumes, though, that the council is approving it this month.
yes,
Yeah, that's not gonna
that's
work.
correct. That's right, so. if
Yeah,
you-
because we're not meeting till the
Right.
earliest this group can meet again, well, we could, I don't know if we can ask everybody.
Council can hold a special meeting, call a special meeting,
We could, we said we could put it on the November
study session.
study session, yeah.
Well, can I ask a loaded question? I'm gonna ask it publicly too. So Gordon had, pointed, so this is looking at approving an agreement
December
days
17th.
before Christmas break starts, but nobody will do anything. And then getting an architect to start in January. Okay? So, if we were to give some time to the system, to me, the only material change is you're gonna have a new council. And is that
We're gonna
any?
have a new council anyway. On this plan,
Uh-huh,
it would be approved at, the architect would be approved at the December meeting.
no, but if we loosen this up,
I know, but if you pushed it out, it's gonna be the same council.
it's still the
That's my
same
point.
meeting.
Yeah,
It's still the same council. You're gonna have a new council approving this in either case.
December or
Or
January.
January.
December.
Oh, that's when the new people are December
We
meeting, not
plan to
January.
seat them December
Okay.
3rd to get the
yeah.
stuff.
So, I know where,
One of them.
Steve, I know where you're going. I mean, practically speaking, I think there would be no time impact if the council were to approve the architect at its January study session,
Okay.
rather than at its December meeting. But
Okay.
it does leave the issue on the council's plate through the Christmas holidays.
Okay, so then, because the other thing that's here that I, like, week of November 24th, just, that's Thanksgiving week.
Yeah.
And like yours true, I'm in Mexico for a week, and I guess I'm not the only one who's going somewhere for Thanksgiving. And so it's a very, 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 very tight schedule. And my instinct is, and no one's gonna, the real work that's gonna get done is not marginal. It's gonna be everybody rushing through the holidays for a marginal amount of benefit. Is that,
I agree.
does anybody have a different feeling than that? Okay, because I mean, we're really talking about approving somebody right
Phil
before
does.
Christmas break.
Because we don't like to let grass grow
No,
under our
it's the
feet.
holidays, it's like, it's Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's, and people are out of
family
town
and
and
gone.
family.